Hey, so you guys have all sent me this Razor Fist video, and I really like the guy. We just have a difference of opinion. I have no problem with Razor Fist whatsoever, but here's the reason why I stand by my opinion when it comes to the Inquisition thing. And kind of separate some things that I was being called out for, probably unjustly. MetalSucks has been around since 2006. They're one of the most mainstream metal sites, but it's also one of those news sites that turns into a tabloidy shitfest, instead of just sticking to the reviews and tour announcements and things that would be on a typical site about music. But hell, I guess sometimes you gotta sprinkle it with some douche to keep those ratings up, right? They have always been on the extreme left. They've always cucked up metal as much as they can, and they even admit it themselves that they're a biased media outlet. To them, music and politics are one and the same, and they are self-proclaimed SJWs. I actually laughed when the whiny crybabies at MetalSucks tried to say that Marduk are Nazis, because apparently one member ordered a piece of Nazi memorabilia online. I mean, I myself collect World War II memorabilia. Unless we forget the great Lemmy himself, peace be upon him, was an avid collector of Nazi shit, and no one ever pinned Motorhead as a Nazi band. And we absolutely need to take this type of journalism into account when we talk about the case of Dagon. We absolutely need to treat websites like MetalSucks as agents of Antifa, because let's face it, they are. And if you don't believe my word on it, here's my buddy John from Raineys Revenge on his personal story on his experience with the MetalSucks call-out culture. This is my buddy John. He is part of Pensacola-based band Raineys Revenge, and he has a special insight on why MetalSucks sucks. Tell me about your experience with them.
Well, it wasn't actually just them. It was, it really started with just social media in general, and it kind of passed on to MetalSucks. PRP, I think, was actually the first website that broke all this nonsense about I should say a previous band. Raineys Revenge actually isn't together anymore. In March of 2016, we agreed to do a show with a band called The Word Alive, which is a little outside of our normal crowd, I guess you could say. Somehow the ball got dropped with the setup time for us. There was a band on before us, and then we were going on right before the 3 touring bands, and we ended up starting a little bit late. And if my memory serves me correct, it wasn't that late, but anyway, to make a long story short, we were told after our first song by the tour manager to play one more song and get off stage. So, in other words, 2 songs. And obviously, we were a little annoyed by that, but we understand. We know how things go, and we, excuse me, we played our second song and got off stage. And this dude proceeded to get on stage and was really, really condescending with us. He was yelling, "Get the fuck off stage."
He got on stage while you were playing?
No, it was right when we were done playing. But regardless, he was being a total dickhead about it, and whatever. We got off stage, and obviously we weren't happy about it. I mean, you can understand this kind of shit all day long, but it's gonna piss you off when you sell pre-sales and do all this shit, and then you only get to play 2 songs and you're talked to like that. So we were pretty annoyed about it, but overall we just let it go. And later on that evening, I was in the front of the venue with our keyboard player. We were smoking cigarettes or just BSing, and we got told that a minor incident had happened, and that they were just letting us know. And I didn't really know what the hell what the venue employee was talking about. And shortly after that, I saw 2 of my band members being escorted out of the venue calmly. It wasn't like they were forcefully shoving them out. So whatever it was, it didn't seem it was that big of a deal. But then I got told that the rest of my band, our merch guy, all of us had to leave, and the venue was actually really apologetic about it. They said it was coming from the headlining band and something, and I didn't know what any of it was about. And it turns out I went on to find out from a security guard that a band member of mine and that tour manager I was referring to earlier got into an argument, I guess, and it turned into a small altercation, and that was it. Just they didn't want us there anymore, so we had to leave. And fair enough, I didn't really want to be there anyway, so I left. And me and the keyboard player, we were walking down to a bar that was just south of that venue, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine asking me what had happened. He wasn't even in town, so I was kind of surprised that he even knew anything could have happened.
Right.
And then he quickly started letting me know that somebody from the headlining band had used our name on social media, saying that we had jumped their tour manager, which is completely bullshit. Because anybody knows us, we're definitely not violent people by any stretch of the imagination. Yet being pissed off about a situation and reacting violently are two different things. And like I said, I wasn't even there. Like, you know, so I mean, saying the whole band jumped him is just, it's just ludicrous. But I tried to just kind of pan it off as, well, it's probably nothing. And by the time I got to that bar that we were going to, I looked down at my phone and saw that it was definitely not nothing, that it was all over social media. Our name was used, my name was used, all this stuff. And then I noticed that a website called PRP was actually screenshotting stuff that my band members were saying to make us look even worse. And before you know it, within the span of an hour, but the Word Alive, I don't even think was even done with their show. We were all over this website. Eventually, Alternative Press, which is another website, they started reporting on the matter. Meanwhile, nobody had come to us about it. The Word Alive didn't come to us about it, which I think if they had just calmly talked to us, could have avoided this whole situation completely. And but like I said, before you know it, we were getting really, really crazy hate mail from all over the world. And then it got even deeper. We started receiving death threats and
death threats.
Death threats. Yeah, we actually had a girl from the one that sticks out in my mind was a girl from Brazil saying that if we ever came to her country, we would be shot dead on sight. It got really bad, and then after the death threats, then people started attacking people close to us. At the time of the show, my girlfriend was at home at our house with our 9-month-old son who was asleep, and then she started getting messages from these random fans, people harassing her. The PRP, they were carefully watching everybody in my band, including specifically our Facebook pages and the band Facebook page, and screenshotting just about anything that we said.
That's just so childish.
It's very childish. Instead of actually reaching out and talking to us, they were trying to just catch us in an emotional act or whatever, which was beyond frustrating. And then eventually, within the next 24 hours, every single website that I could think of, except for one, did a report on this without reaching out to us. And the one that didn't do any kind of reporting on this was actually Metal Injection. The one thing that was even more frustrating is a lot of our friends kept saying this, and people don't understand this until you go through something like it, is kept saying, well, dude, look at this on the bright side, you know, there's no such thing as bad press. Yes, there fucking is. Like, we weren't a very big band. We were big here, but, you know, in Philadelphia, no one knows who the fuck Raineys Revenge is, you know. And now the first opinion they have about us is that we're a bunch of, you know, thugs beating up tour managers, you know, like, and it really screwed up a lot of things for us. I mean, before we had a chance to do anything to try and even, you know, take advantage of this, which we obviously didn't.
Right.
We already had 2 shows that were canceled over the whole thing. One was that weekend. They weren't canceled. We were just asked not to play. We went from getting the opportunity to open up for, you know, bands like, you know, Hatebreed and Goatwhore and Whitechapel, Trivia and bands like that, to not even being considered for some of these big shows. And not that I'm saying that those are the only shows that matter. I've always been under the impression that if you get the opportunity to play a show, you know, that's a good thing. But if you're already being excluded from big shows, especially when you got to play them, it makes it hard to further succeed. And that's where our problems started, was we couldn't, we kind of got stuck a couple levels below where we already were, and we couldn't move up. I'm not going to sit there and say that the issue with the Word Alive is the reason why we're not a band anymore, but I also too believe, had that not happened, we might still be here playing shows, but we couldn't get ahead. So yeah, it really just kind of screwed us completely, the whole thing. It was really, really fucking aggravating.
Do you feel like the Word Alive kind of used this as a publicity stunt?
Yes.
Sorry.
We all in the band and a few other people actually helped us put this together. We do believe that that because we went on to find out the next day after this happened, when the Word Alive was getting all this love from their fans and saying how they got their back, they had a new album dropping that very next day. The one thing we did do, and I thought this was a little interesting too, and I actually never have publicly talked about this on any show until now, but I actually tried to get a hold of the Word Alive after that, because it started to get really uncomfortable with the death threats and the violence and stuff like that. You know, I'm not one to sit there and put my tail between my legs or anything like that, but I also do live in a house with, at the time, a 9-month-old little boy, and I don't think anybody should take, you know, threats like that lightly, especially not nowadays. You know, it's very
Oh no,
possible.
people are crazy.
Yeah, and so I messaged, I sent an email to the Word Alive's publicist and told her, you know, essentially I said, look, you know, we have a very different outlook on what happened with this show. said, but regardless, we're getting death threats. We're having, you know, people that are close to us that are getting harassed on the internet. We would like for you to try and get your fans to stop this in any way possible. We heard nothing from them. So then I contacted the Word Alive myself on Facebook, essentially saying the same thing, and I actually got a response back, and I want to say it was their lead singer, whose name's Telly Smith, but I don't know that for a fact, but I think it was him, and he responded back basically saying no, you know, that they're not going to do anything about it, and that their fans wouldn't kill anybody. That's crazy. Those were his exact words, and I'm saying this is, you know,
dude. I mean, like,
people are getting bombed at Ariana Grande concerts. I mean, there's some people that have it coming to them, like the Inquisition guy, you know, and then there's people that, you know, probably just took things a little too far because they were having too much fun, and then just get shat all over.
What did you learn from the entire experience of being blasted on metal news media tabloids?
I haven't been able to play a super big show like that since then. Raineys Revenge did play several shows after that, and some of them were relatively big, but they weren't anything like that. But I know I'll definitely be on my P's and Q's a lot more the next time we do play a show like that, and I know what to and not to say on social media, not because of anything I might not mean, but because of the simple fact that these people are out there watching. You know, as soon as these metal websites, if they get an idea that they've got a story, they're going to turn it into one, no matter what.
Herein lies the difference between my buddy John's story and the story of Dagon. While most of the MetalSucks shit is definitely some sort of witch hunting campaign, I think it's extremely lame that people are defending Inquisition like it's some sort of manhunt against black metal itself. When this time MetalSucks didn't cry wolf like usual. When there are bands that are far more underground that surpass the talent of Inquisition tenfold, with guys that are disturbed, but still are not subhuman pedophile filth, I feel like they deserve far more attention than a fucking Seasons of Mist band, which is like one of the most extremely mainstream metal labels there is. Especially since, let's be honest with ourselves, Inquisition was basically just another Immortal ripoff. Last time I checked, it's always been lame as fuck to be into the extremely popular bands. And for those of you who don't delve hard into black metal, the majority of bands that are absolutely brilliant are so underground that they're not going to be found at your local FYE. If it's the two-piece thing you're after, I highly suggest a band called Selbst. They are fucking incredible. Just to name one that's extremely underground and extremely amazing. As I said in my first video about this subject, the problem with all of this is Antifa, who for some reason has put their target onto black metal tours. They now have another reason to come after amazing US black metal tour packages. Because I'm noticing a trend of, well, pedophile apologetics, defenders, and people who are saying it's cult to be a pedophile. I mean, I know our kind have always been a bunch of weirdos, but the major ideology of black metal has always been the eradication of human filth and the fight against major religion. No fun, no core, no mosh, no trends, in the words of Mayhem. And if we can't all agree that pedophiles are filth, then I'm beating a dead horse. What most are forgetting in this whole thing is the nature of a plea bargain. What happens at a plea bargain is when a prosecutor offers you a lesser charge if you just plead guilty. My problem with this, if the man was actually innocent, which he wasn't, then he would have fought it. As anyone would have if there wasn't substantial evidence against them. And unfortunately, although most of us don't want to admit that it's true, there was a ton of evidence against Dagon in that case. I choose not to read the investigation notes on this video, however I will link them below for you to read them yourself. Plea bargains are often offered when the defendant will be found guilty and the court system doesn't want to go through a lengthy conviction process. The problem is, Dagon did do time for child porn. He did go to the state sex offender therapy, and he did go through all the hoops. But he was lucky enough in this plea bargain that the sex offender thing didn't stick to him. This happens all the time in the US court system, especially when the person accused doesn't have a lengthy criminal record. Mandatory minimum sentencing only applies when a plea bargain hasn't been met. And if you look at the county court records on this case, there is a guilty plea on all charges, including the kid porn. And this is public record, not MetalSucks propaganda. In my research for this video, I also found what the Center for Sex Offender Management has to say about the plea bargain thing. And here's what it is. Many cases involving sex offenses do not proceed to trial. Rather, they are commonly resolved through plea negotiations. Some plea agreements may eliminate the sex offense component of the case, which can inadvertently imply to the victim that the offense was actually less harmful or serious. Furthermore, eliminating the sex offense nature of the crime through plea negotiations can limit the eventual applicability of common sex offender management strategies, such as offense-specific treatment, specialized supervision, and monitoring strategies, and the sex offender registration and community notification laws. Thus, to the extent possible, plea negotiations should ensure that the sexually abusive aspects of the crime remain visible, which is absolutely the case in the Dagon trial. Typically, when defendants offer a plea of guilty, the factual basis for the plea must be established, whereby the individual must acknowledge in open court the details contained in the allegations or the charging document. Because defendants are not always required to acknowledge having committed offenses for which they ultimately receive convictions, plea agreements of this nature can exacerbate offender denial and minimization, and undermine the treatment and supervision process. And if we're still going with the fuck the law, this is black metal approach, if we choose to look at this issue through the left-hand path point of view, basically all sects and versions of the occult are extremely against pedophilia, as it is something that is allowed in the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. And the left-hand path is in direct opposition to these laws. And to quote one of the most prolific occultists of all time, this is what Aleister Crowley has to say about this. Acts invasive of another individual's equal rights are implicitly self-aggressions. Such acts as rape and the assault or seduction of infants may therefore be justly regarded as offenses against the law of liberty and repressed in the interests of the law. And if you don't buy it when I talk about Abrahamic religion being in support of pedophilia, here are a few verses from the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran that justify fondling children. So basically, if you are a self-proclaimed Satanist and agree with pedophilia, then you're definitely not as far on the left-hand path as you believe yourself to be. I've also seen a lot of people bring up the Michael Jackson and Static X things. First off, while Michael Jackson had one of the most successful pop careers of all time, I could give two shits about Michael Jackson. This isn't a conversation about mainstream music, it's a conversation about metal. And let's be honest, I hate mainstream music. Static X is also a band that I've never been a fan of, but let's look and see what happened there. So in 2005, one of their guitarists posed as a fan of Static X online, met a 14-year-old girl, and banged her in some parking lot. This kind of behavior is predatory and wrong. The guy was 39 years old. And I understand that society changes and 14-year-olds don't always look like 14-year-olds anymore. It's still an almost 40-year-old man taking advantage of a young teenager. Not to mention, it's morally and legally wrong on all fronts. I have personal friends in the police community that are involved in the fight against internet pedophiles, and the number of people they bust is absolutely appalling. I don't care about what weird fetishes you have. I am a fan of degeneracy myself. However, when it involves kids that have no right or reason to be involved in this kind of thing, then I and the majority of normal thinking humans find pedophilia to be a crime against nature itself. I am in full support of black metal remaining the dangerous music that it's always been. I want black metal to push the boundaries of extremes. But we also need to be conscious of what type of warriors we allow in our ranks. My way of life cannot be infiltrated by pedophile apologists, because pedophilia is subhuman weakness. I know you guys were expecting some sort of apology video, but that ain't happening, bitches!
Jesus Christ.
Are you one of the few people that'll watch this and isn't a fan of pedophiles? Do you have too much time on your hands? Sub to this channel and I'll probably keep putting out content. Also, come hang out with me on Twitch. I am there almost every night. Stay fucking metal.